So the question of our generation, I could definitely say of my generation for sure, is whether or not video games contribute to real world violence, particularly gun violence. And, you know, I thought about making this video, and I knew I was going to eventually make a video about this just because, hey, it's gaming and it's gaming culture, and it's something that we need to discuss. It's something we need to talk about for all of us in all of our lives, different situations we got going for us. And it's a question we need to examine as best as we can. So I'm on GameSpot over here. GameSpot posted an article titled RFK cites video games as a possible cause of real-world gun violence. He does. There's about a 2-3 minute clip from an interview, I believe, in a hearing in Washington. And he noted that when it comes to real-world gun violence, that video games could potentially be a cause or a contributing factor to violence distributed from people. And this has been a question that's been raised ever since we started doing ratings for video games. We're talking old school. We're talking like the original Grand Theft Auto, Mortal Kombat, very early on games where kids, for the most part, and that includes people in my generation. I was born in 1992, and plenty of those games are coming into the marketplace. And you know, for me personally, and I can attest to this, when video games started becoming a thing in our household, my parents definitely took a look at what games were here, what were available. And I remember times, specifically for one game, if you guys remember Turok and the N64, a little bit of a violent game for sure. I don't even recall playing it ever, but my dad got first dibs at it to test the game to see if it was good enough to play. And they said no. Mature rated game, even back in the 90s. And they said no. And whether or not I agreed with it at the time, I'm kind of glad that my parents took the initiative to vet what I could or could not play or even see. You know, the same logic applied for movies in general back in the day. R-rated movies, depending on what the movie was, kids couldn't see it. Or if under the parent's discretion, the kid was mature enough to understand the difference between what is fake and real, what is fantasy, fiction, and what is reality, then that could be the time to start to introduce them to these things. Because eventually, kids are going to grow up and they're going to seek some of this stuff out anyway. But it's good to arm them early in life to know the difference between, hey, this is a video game, this is a movie, this is fake, it's not real, and you need to, every kid early on in life needs to build up that wall between what is real and what is fake. And video games is definitely in that category, just like anything else. So there's no question that when it comes to mature rated games or violent video games, and for a couple reasons, I have a few issues with a lot of the quoted. All these are linked to articles like this previous link. Absolutely, connection between violent video games, increased aggressive behavior, was posted back in 2014, which is interesting. And you know, like I said, it's a thing that's existed for decades at this point, but nothing really explained what is a violent video game. If we just take violence at its face value, virtually every video game today is violent. Very few video games aren't violent. Even Stardew Valley has violence. You go into the mines and you're fighting off mummies or ghosts and stuff like that. Like there is violence. You're using weaponry to destroy some form of an enemy. So violence exists anywhere. The issue I have with people just overgeneralizing that video games lead to aggressive behavior is that video games is no different from any other source of media that we consume. That could be movies, that can be books. And one thing I really want to point out is that video games and the consumption of them, and as a video gamer, as someone who's played video games for decades, for basically most of my life, I can attest that you do get angry. Your aggression does increase by playing video games, but it really depends on multiple factors. One, your age and whether or not you're able to control that internal aggression. And the way I like to look at it is like this. As far as I know, and you know, please hop in the comments to correct me on this line of logic, but I think it's a pretty good one. So scorpions, we all know what scorpions are. We're told that the smaller the scorpion could indicate the age of the scorpion. Not to point out the discrepancies between types, but nonetheless, there is a line of logic that the younger it is, the less able it is to control the venom in its sting. So when it stings something, if you get stung by something that's incredibly small, like a scorpion, for instance, there's a chance the venom probably got released into your system and you need to seek immediate medical attention. Whereas the older and bigger the scorpion is, the more mature it is, there's a chance that if it does sting you, it might not have released the venom. And there's something to correlate that to people, to kids versus adults. When you're a kid, and I can remember this vividly, there have been times where I'm just filled with emotions. I'm just filled with anger, with rage, and even hate, like the ultimate form of anger. And you lash out. You swing wildly. You have temper tantrums. Anyone who knows any kid under the age of 10 can totally attest to this. You might say words that you have no idea what they mean, and the effects of that is like the venom. You're just releasing indiscriminately this amount of hate, this anguish that you feel all over everyone for whatever reason. And that's something that video games, I think, could potentially add to sort of fit this reasoning that a lot of people have with violent video games, quote unquote violent video games. And the question does boil down to, are kids allowed to play them? I would say no, because they can't control themselves. They have no sense of self-control, not at that age. Between as young as they're able to start standing up and walking to potentially even when they're teenagers. It really does depend on the person, but up until your teenage years, like the logic extent of your brain's not fully developed. Not until you start reach the age of 18. Like there's so much development and so much self-control that you need to experience in order to be a very stable person, I would say. But yeah, after the age of 18, you should have developed that internally already. You should know the difference, like I was saying before, about building up that sort of wall between fiction and reality. If that is grounded in yourself and you're of a mature age that has some amount of self-control, then there should be no excuse. You should be able to consume whatever kind of media you want, be it a violent video game or something I was trying to allude to a little bit earlier. And you guys could probably attest to this as well, looking at friends or family members. I can definitely attest to watching my dad occasionally. There are people who consume sporting events. They could be whatever sport, football, basketball, baseball, whatever. The amount of aggression you get from fans watching professionals play a game, and then your team is the losing side. Can you not see the aggression? Can you not see the anger, potentially even the hate pouring out of people just from watching other people play a game? Consumption of media can shift your emotions. It just boils down to whether or not you can control them. And we have seen people out there rioting for and against whether or not your team won a celebratory riot or your team lost, and people destroy things. It's all over the place. But it boils down to self-control. That's what all of this is self-control. Violent video games, I could potentially see, and I was discussing this with my wife, people who do not do any form of self-control, I could definitely see violent video games. And again, quote unquote violent video games. Are we playing GTA? Are we playing a competitive game? Because the rage that you can potentially create back and forth, depending on those kind of games, is very different things. And that's something that I feel like a lot of people kind of miss when they do these studies, is I need data. What games? I believe there was one study, this 2019 study. It was one of these studies, and you guys can link to this. I'll leave a link to this article down in the description. But one of them just kept talking about people playing violent video games and what they how they interacted with friends and family as well. Like how did the aggression that they received or created, whatever, from playing games, how did it spread to one's social network, and even including the social network, social media? How did they transmit all of that aggression? But they left out the more important part of what games were they playing. Like we're lacking data here. Maybe it did say, I tried doing a brief look over of it and I couldn't find anything, but nonetheless, exposure, and I want to take a look at this right here. Exposure to violent media, especially violent video games, may cause desensitization to real world violence. I would say unequivocally, this is completely not true. And this again boils down to self-control. Like I said, I played violent video games for decades. Not one time has desensitization to real world violence manifested itself. I was trying to think of a different way to say that, but nothing like that has manifested itself, because again, it's the wall between fiction and reality. Fictional aggression towards a video game is very understood and very separate from real world aggression that I see in real life over like even in the early days when I'm at school and there's like a fight that's breaking out, you almost feel a different set of emotions in a way when you observe something like that. And then you start taking it to the news and you see things going on in real life. And again, this boils down back to how a person was raised. And kids generally should not consume those kind of games until it is well shown that they can separate the difference between fiction and reality. That's ultimately what it is. We were talking, my wife and I, we've talked multiple times about this, but we were talking earlier today. It's like, kids growing up, can they play video games? It's like, they can, but they can play things that don't necessarily kind of break that wall. And I was thinking, what really for kids would start to blur the line between fiction and reality? And it's really games that are, honestly, the games that are made now, ones that seem so real you can't unsee it. It's like, how is this not real? Because kids, and I think it's before the logic center of the brain fully develops. It's like something pertaining to that. I'm not a neurologist, so don't quote me on that. But kids are very creative. Kids imagine all sorts of things. You play pretend all over the place. So everything to you is fake. Nothing is really real. And then once you start introducing video games and all sorts of stuff, creative stuff that video games create, you sort of lose sense. And it'll happen to people in real life too. You lose a sense of reality, just putting it exactly like that. So it's very important for kids, especially early on, to know what is fake and know what is real. And that's just it comes back to parenting. It really does. There's no other way around it. Kids being exposed to whatever media, and then that's still, I guess, translating into later in life, and they develop a certain, I guess, tendency toward things. It's like, how are they parented? How are they raised? And it's important. It's very, very important to know the difference between fiction and reality, but also developing and learning self-control. It's really those two things. Saying that video games are a link to it, the only link I could potentially see is someone who is already like this, someone who has lost their sense of fiction and reality, who has no self-control or lives in a world that is devoid of self-control. Games will sort of keep you in that loop as well. And the article also mentions that they were talking about, the uptick in real world violence, including dependency on psychiatric drugs. It's like, that'll just leave people in this sort of loop. And this loop only goes in one particular direction. Hopefully it can go into a better direction, but you don't know. I don't know. This unfortunately does not speak to the kind of person that I am. I have self-control and I know the difference between fiction and reality, and I never lose I never lose that direction, I guess, is the way to look at it. So for me personally, yes, I feel aggression. I feel anger sometimes when I play video games. And I'll play a game like Deadlock, and the enemy team is just utterly destroying us, and I'm just like, bro, why is it this way? Sure, totally. I felt that. You guys could probably pull up numerous amounts of videos. There are numerous times on stream that I've demonstrated aggression. Hit my desk, whatever. I shout, raise my voice, say some curse words. I try not to nearly as much anymore. I'm trying to tack down on curse words in totality. But yeah, sure, it happens. Am I going to take that and pour it out onto someone else? No, because that's stupid. Why would I do that? They did nothing to me. And even if they did, it's like, where did all this aggression come from? And I knew its source. I was playing a game, something untoward, something bad happened to me that I took as an offense, and that gets transmitted to other places. Absolutely. But the older you get, the more mature you get, the more mature you're supposed to get, the more control, again, going back to the Scorpion narrative, is that you're supposed to be able to control that venom. You're supposed to be able to take that, put it somewhere else, or if you have little or no self-control, then you don't play them. It's as simple as that. And there's plenty of other games to go play. Video games, because again, this says video games as a possible real-world gun violence. It just blatantly says video games. Not to hark on the creation of this article, but people say that anyway. Some people will say violent video games. Some people will just say video games. Video games in totality are an issue. And it's just like, no, sorry. Condemn video games, you have to condemn literally every other form of media. That's just how it is. It boils down to, again, self-control. Self-control and knowing the difference between fake and real. It doesn't get any more cut and dry as it does. And, this topic will probably pop up again and again. This goes on to talk about how this has been mentioned in any form of shooting in America as well as the rest of the world, and how we do our best with controlling the video game industry, but also the ESRB for putting down ratings for video games, and that's only to mitigate the potential for kids to get copies of these video games. But to be honest, again, this idea that video games lead to or are a cause of is just not true. It's just not true. There are so many other contributing factors, and I think more direct factors to someone being a violent person than it is from the video game. So many things to talk about this. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave it at that. Pretty much my 2 cents on video games being an issue for the youth, and it is, provided that they're not being correctly monitored. And that's with everything. You wouldn't want your kid to watch a scary movie or an R-rated, very gory movie. You wouldn't want them reading certain books, provided they probably can't read those books because they're so young. There's so many things, music even. There's so many things out there, so many other forms of media out there you would not want your kid consuming unless directly supervised for many reasons. And video games are no different. So just want to talk about that a little bit. I like how we're actually hitting more or less the same time on all the videos. So we're slowly but surely stretching out the size of these videos. So that's good. But be sure to leave your guys' opinion in the comments. You guys agree that video games need to be strictly monitored for kids, particularly, I would say under the teenage years, but even some teenagers. It really does depend on the kid. Some mature earlier than others, some don't. Some don't mature until their 20s. I feel that. Or do you guys think that the video game industry needs to take it back a little bit when it comes to some of the violence that are showcased in a lot of video games? I know, again, we talk GTA, we talk Mortal Kombat, but there's plenty of games that distribute like crazy amount of violence. You can even go to the God of War series. That's pretty gnarly in terms of violence. But again, knowing the difference between fiction and reality and kind of appreciating the artwork of it, I don't take that and distribute anger and aggression to other people. And then competitive games is a completely different beast. There are some very violent games that I play that I feel nothing from. It's just like, ooh, that was cool. Ooh, that combination was kind of cool. Ooh, that artwork was pretty sick. Do I want to go out and harm something? Not really. The only time I feel a crazy amount of aggression from is after getting rolled by playing a game of Valorant, even Overwatch, Deadlock. The amount of rage you see people showcase, especially on streams, playing a game like League of Legends. Like, dude, the difference between something competitive like that, which is not incredibly violent, versus a game like GTA, like, I'm sorry, these people, I get a sense they don't know what they're talking about, because not a lot of these people are gamers, and it shows. It really, really shows. So be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. I really want to know any input. Don't be afraid to post a comment. I read pretty much all of them because the channel is relatively small and I don't get a lot of comments anywhere else. So anytime you guys post a comment, I am 100% of the time probably looking at it, probably going to reply to it, at least like it, to let you guys know that I saw it. So be sure to let me know your comments down below. And yeah, again, I appreciate you guys watching the video. Be sure to like, because likes on any form of content are super, super helpful. Be sure to sub. And I guess, do we still ring the bell for notifications if that still works? I know that works for some people. It doesn't work for others. But yeah, sub. I would greatly appreciate it if you guys subbed. And I'll be back on tomorrow for another video. So you guys have a good rest of your Wednesday. I will see you guys tomorrow. Until then, I will see you guys later.